Donald Trump wants to get out of this. He's finally figured out there's nothing to win. We can drop bombs and shoot missiles at these people all that we like. It's not going to change the condition of the region. It's not going to improve anything. Worst of all, it's going to send the world into an economic recession, maybe depression. So I think we've effectively lost this war. I think the Iranians know it. And they are now saying that they've had feelers from us, which I'm sure is probably true behind the scenes. We would like a ceasefire. And the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and the government itself, the armed forces, have all spoken with one voice. There will be no ceasefire. Well, I think we know that roughly 20 to 25% of the world's oil supply passes through the Straits of Hormuz. And any disruption of that, of course, is causing discomfort. Now, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps controls the Straits of Hormuz. We do not. I understand last night they mined it or began mining it, but they've controlled it for quite a while now, certainly since the war began over a week ago. And there's nothing we can do about it because with precision-guided missiles linked to space-based terrestrial collection of intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, we're in a very, very vulnerable position. Now, we did not immediately begin this war. We need to understand that. Israel did. The Israelis struck, once again, Iran, while Iran was, at least in theory, negotiating with us. I say in theory because I'm not sure we were ever terribly sincere about it. But our two real estate billionaires, Witkoff and Kushner, were representing the president, and they were actually negotiating with the Iranian government when the Israelis launched their strikes. In response, President Trump seems to have said, okay, they've started, we need to join the fight, so let's get on with this. And the consequence of that decision has put the whole world in an economic tailspin, because it's not simply 25% of the oil, 50% or more of China's oil comes through the Straits of Hormuz, 73% of Japan's oil, 68% of South Korea's oil, more than 50% of India's oil. So just stop and consider that, because we just named the top economies in the world. I mean, these are the engines of economic productivity and prosperity globally. What happens there makes a big difference, not just to those people, billions of people in Asia, but to us. Secondly, the Iranians struck back at us. They hit all of our bases in the region. We continue to whine and say, oh, no, we still have bases and not everybody is gone. Well, you have a few people at these places. They spend most of their time in underground shelters. We're not using any of the bases, and we cannot use any of the bases at this point. They destroyed all of the early warning radars. This is very important because that means that your warning time is very, very short. In other words, missiles are coming at you with some of these radars almost immediately. They're all gone now. That means that you're being surprised and given like 3-4 minutes warning before you get into the shelter. Israel itself has been virtually destroyed. It sustained damage far, far beyond anything that was seen during the first so-called 12-day war with Israel. And the Israeli state, I think, is in a lot of trouble. Now, what have we done? Well, we've killed some of the top echelon of the leadership in Iran in an unprecedented sort of way. We've adopted this sort of Israeli approach to war, which is we try to assassinate all of your leaders. Ultimately, that has not worked very well because the Iranians were prepared for it, and they had very clearly delineated chains of succession. So virtually everybody who was killed, frankly, knew they were likely to be killed and had already designated people to replace them. Secondly, the Iranians knew they could never stand up to our Air Force. They could probably shoot down some of us if they were lucky, and they had practically no Air Force to begin with. A lot of people are listening to President Trump say, well, I destroyed Iran's Air Force. Well, it wasn't much to destroy. And then he says, well, we've destroyed their Navy. Well, 7 frigates is about all the Iranians had. Everything else were small little patrol boats or motorboats. They do have some diesel submarines. I don't know whether or not those have been accounted for because the Navy doesn't like diesel subs because they're very, very hard to track, especially in shallow water. But my point is, Iran knew all of these things were going to happen. So where did they put all of their investment over the last 20 years? Well, they put it into huge underground facilities that are very, very safe. And they have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of missiles. Before the war began, the best estimate that I could get from people I trust was 45,000 missiles. Now, they're not going to run out of missiles. And the interesting part is that during the first few days, they hurled at the Israelis and us relatively old missile technology. Over the last few days, they've started to use their hypersonic precision-guided weapons, which are very, very accurate, very devastating, and they cannot be stopped. In other words, it doesn't matter what sort of air and missile defense you have. They can't be stopped. Right now, we don't have an effective air and missile defense in the Gulf. In other words, all of these small states that are really legacies of the British Empire. You know, the British moved into the Gulf a couple of hundred years ago, and they picked up various sheikhs from tribes and say, okay, we're going to let you run this area, in return for which you are going to get paid a lot of money. In the meantime, we're going to get all the oil we want. Literally, that's the way it began. Mm-hmm. And so you have these billionaires who acquired enormous wealth, who up until the British arrived were basically herding sheep. My point is, you know, these states are in trouble. And Iran has gone to great lengths to demonstrate to them conclusively that if you allow Americans into your country to build bases and think that you're going to attack us with impunity, we are going to destroy you. Mm. So I would argue that the first lesson from this war for all the Gulf states is we must leave. When this war ends, whenever it ends, we're leaving, and we won't be allowed back. Israel's air and missile defense has effectively collapsed. They can't knock down most of what's hitting them right now. But more important, the missiles they're using now, they can fire 10 missiles instead of 100 missiles and do more damage because the payloads are thousands of pounds of explosive, and they are accurate, and they can't be stopped.